Good evening and welcome to Deer Lake School District. My name's Janelle Logue Bowden. I'm the superintendent here in this fine district. You are in for a really wonderful program this evening. Last year, I was so thrilled and honored to be part of it. You're going to have some laughs this evening and some tears. The people that are being honored tonight are remarkable people. They have meant a lot to this district. And tonight they are going to be recognized for the great things that they have done. So please be very welcomed here. Sit back and enjoy the program. I'd like to introduce to you again Dan Greer, who's going to lead us through the program. Thank you.
Once again, my name is Dan Greer, and I'm the Executive Council President of the Deer Lakes High School Student Council. Next year, I will be attending the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, as a member of its honors program. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, and welcome to the 5th Annual Deer Lakes Distinguished Alumni Awards Dinner and Induction Ceremony.
Well, hello again. My name is Chloe Dower, and I'm the Senior Class President of the Deer Lakes High School Student Council, and I will attend Slippery Rock University next year. The purpose of the Distinguished Alumni Award is to identify, recognize, celebrate, and honor those alumni who have distinguished themselves in academics, the arts, or public service, or through professional contributions or athletics at the collegiate or professional level, and who, in doing so, have contributed to the pride and prestige of the Deer Lakes School District. Earlier this year, the district circulated nomination forms asking East Deer, Fraser, and West Deer residents to nominate graduates from the East Deer, Fraser, and West Deer School District and the Deer Lake School District, who graduated at least a decade ago and whom they felt deserved to be recognized. I'm proud to say that I was a member of the 7-member selection committee comprised of administrators, individuals from the community at large, board members, and students of the Deer Lake School District to select 5 honorees before us all tonight. The honorees were selected on the basis of outstanding contributions made in their chosen professions.
Hello, I'm Surgeon Dottie. I am Vice President of the Deer Lakes High School Student Council. I'm a senior who will be attending the University of Pittsburgh this fall. This year's honorees have traveled to great lengths, often literally, to achieve their goals. They include an esteemed high school guidance counselor, a trusted surgeon and service member, a devoted teacher, an accomplished reporter, and a retired executive who continues to help Deer Lake students through his generous philanthropic efforts.
Hello, my name is Daniel Decker, and I am the Senior Class Treasurer. Next year I will attend Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. One thing all of tonight's honorees have in common is they all began their academic, personal, and professional journeys right here in the Deer Lakes community. So please join me in congratulating all of them on receiving this prestigious honor. I would also like to mention that our awards tonight were all made by Deer Lake students, so let's give them a hand as well. Thank you.
Our first honoree tonight is Dr. Robert W. Kelly. The late Dr. Robert W. Kelly Sr., Colonel, U.S. Army, age 69, enjoyed a long, extremely successful career as a general surgeon at Allegheny Valley Hospital and as a trauma surgeon at Allegheny General Hospital and as a burn surgeon at West Penn Hospital as part of the Allegheny Health Network. A retired officer in the United States Army Reserves, Dr. Kelly served abroad as a trauma surgeon in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan, among others. He also spent his residency in Georgia and Hawaii. During his time at East Deer Fraser High School, Dr. Kelly was a football letter winner and class salutatorian. Dr. Kelly, who grew up in a blue-collar family in Creighton, earned his undergraduate degree in chemistry from Allegheny College in 1968, making him the first member of his family to earn a college degree. In 1973, Dr. Kelly earned his medical license from the Bowman Gray School of Medicine at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. As a resident in surgery, Dr. Kelly was responsible for helping to teach younger residents and medical students while advancing his own education. Throughout his career, Dr. Kelly continued to study his craft to stay current on the latest techniques and treatments for patients in general surgery and burn care. He also proudly mentored resident physicians and physician assistant students. In 1981, Dr. Kelly finally returned to the Alakiski Valley to open his own solo general surgery practice in Tarentum. He opened that practice for the next 2+ decades before closing it due to the recurrent demands of overseas deployment as part of his service to the country and its wounded soldiers. He also served for many years as a school and team physician for the Lower Burrell School District. Dr. Kelly sadly passed away on March 11th. He is survived by his wife, Tina Kelly, son, Robert W. Kelly Jr., daughter, Bethany Glokowski, and grandchildren, Max Kelly and Jillian and Wyatt Glokowski, as well as his brother, Dr. Bruce Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring Dr. Robert W. Kelly.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to honor my father and my hero. I was there with my dad when he found out that he would be receiving this award and could tell that he was excited and honored. At the time, I had no idea that it would be me giving the acceptance speech. While I'm standing up here, there are 2 traits that he possessed that I continue to strive to achieve and hope that I'm successful at tonight. The first being that he had the ability to not ever let himself get too emotional either way. He could maintain an even keel. In football, we say don't let yourself get too caught up in the emotion and let your highs get too high or your lows get too low. And Coach Bolton pointed that out to me earlier as we were walking in here too. The second was that he had the ability to talk in front of a large group of people. He gave numerous speeches and presentations in the classroom teaching physician assistants, medical students, and residents. He was even voted Preceptor of the Year at Duquesne University by the students. Upon returning from Afghanistan and Iraq, he also gave slideshow presentations from each place describing what it was like to be in those situations from a trauma surgeon perspective. My father talked fondly of growing up in Creighton and attending East Deer Fraser High School. It was this period of his life that he set the building blocks for his faith. He was an active member of James United Methodist Church. Family, most of our family also lived in Creighton, and he talked fondly of spending time with his grandfather and getting into trouble with his cousin Jack Lord. And finally, vocation. His Uncle Bob and his father Chuck both served in the military during World War II, as well as his education laying the groundwork and helping him develop his passion for becoming a surgeon and helping others. It was these formative years that taught him hard work, being goal-oriented, and focused on getting the job accomplished. While in high school, one of the many activities that he participated in and had a passion for was football. His coach, Don Pappy Bolton, is in attendance tonight. I know he doesn't want to stand up, but I'll just point him out. He's in the back row there. Am I loud enough? Am I doing good? All right. My father had many stories of his playing days at East Deer and always enjoyed sharing them. Last year, I joined the coaching staff at Springdale and had the opportunity and honor of spending time in coaching with Coach Bolton. Coach not only remembered my dad after all these years, but also had some good stories about him too. Coach Bolton told me to tell my dad that he wanted to see him. And even though my dad was not feeling well at the time, when your head football coach tells you he wants to see you, you go. They met up before a game, and it was great hearing the stories and laughs that both of them had reminiscing. It was a time that I'll never forget. My father was a humble man who led by example, especially to myself and my sister Bethany, particularly when it came to education and being a leader. He never stopped educating himself. Growing up, I remember seeing him study every couple of months what was called selective readings as part of maintaining his license, as well as attending conferences to learn about new techniques that he could bring back to his own private practice, and later as a part of the trauma team at Allegheny General Hospital and on the burn unit at West Penn Hospital. In the Army, he also continued to educate himself and strive to achieve a higher rank, eventually retiring as a colonel and earning the Bronze Star. As he and I were cleaning out his office, he came across a paper that he wrote in 2006 on leadership. He asked me if I wanted it, and after all these years of knowing him, I knew that this was his indirect way of teaching me and helping me grow in my profession based on his perspective. As I sat down to think about what to say tonight, I came across the paper, and I would like to read it because I think it will give you a further understanding of his faith, family, and vocation. Quote, "I'll trust you as long as I can trust you." These words were expressed by my father the day I obtained my driver's license. This sentence outlined my privileges, responsibilities, and the consequences of my actions, good or bad. It was in effect his vision and mission statement. It reflected his values, ethics, and leadership philosophy. It was clear, concise, and totally understandable. My father was a chaplain's assistant in the 44th Infantry Division during World War II. His mission was to keep the chaplain alive, play the organ, and kill the enemy. He lived the Army values. I hope that one day my children can say the same for me. Quote, "I don't make the products you use, I make them better." Leadership style and philosophy is in large part determined by the opportunities to present themselves during your career. I characterize myself as a product developer, not a strategist. Leadership style should be flexible and tailored to the situation and the people you are leading or influencing. I deal with these three totally different types of situations and therefore must adapt styles of leadership. I deal directly with patients. I teach medical students, residents, and PA students, and I'm in the United States Army. Being a general surgeon in private practice for over 20 years, I would say that developing interpersonal skills was a high priority. Dealing with patients 20 years ago was more directing. You told them what was wrong and how you were going to fix it. In this day and age, people demand a more participating style of leadership. To properly influence and motivate patients today requires that they be more directly involved in the decision-making process. They must be influenced and motivated if they are to accept a decision as right for them. The same could be said for the Generation Y soldier. The Army has embarked on a campaign of teaching all soldiers to develop critical thinking skills. This skill must be incorporated into everyday life to be successful. Dealing with students involves multiple styles of leadership. As a student grows, you proceed from directing to participating and delegating to hopefully transformational. Every student is different, and the trick is to recognize the differences and to bring out their full potential. Every military career should have a defining moment. My moment was the privilege of helping lead the 339th CHS in Afghanistan. I was the CPS, and I have no idea what that means, but and will always be grateful for the opportunity. During that time, I saw the worst and best of command. The medical brigade commanders were micromanagers. Their style did not encourage initiative. The hospital commander was an example of the best a leader could be. He was demanding but fair. The soldier came first. As an example, the CSH was short on air conditioners, and the command tent did not get air conditioning until every other soldier's sleeping tent was cool. The unit's performance was outstanding due to the commander's leadership and the strength, courage, loyalty, and motivation of each soldier. The soldiers made me look good. Quote, "If you're going to do a job, do it right or don't do it at all." My father-in-law lived by this motto and taught it to his 3 daughters. If something does not work, it is now fashionable to blame the process. In some cases, this may be true, but I strongly believe in accountability and responsibility. If you accept responsibility and are accountable for your own actions, then you are living the Army values. You will develop the mental, physical, and emotional attributes necessary to carry out your mission. Quote, "A man has got to know his limitations. I am not a strategic thinker. My training has been at the operational level. Therefore, my vision is to understand the situation and make it better. My strong suit is my interpersonal skills. My weakness is my lack of understanding and patience with people who are not focused and committed as to what I understand the mission to be. I won't ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself, but I expect full commitment until the task is accomplished. A leader must be willing to learn as he is to lead and to teach. My leadership philosophy has been shaped from my father, father-in-law, military, and civilian experience. I have grown from a delegating to a participating, and I hope a transformational leader. My vision is now to make those under my influence better. I hope to develop more tolerance, but I doubt that my attitude about responsibility and accountability will change. After all, a man has got to know his limitations. Finally, I also want to stress that the family, especially my sister and myself, were my father's priority. I'm sure that it was very difficult, especially while he was in private practice and on call for the hospital. He made sure to make every concert, recital, play, game, and almost every practice. He also was involved in all activities, including being president of Lower Borough Flyers Football Organization, president of the Borough Football Gridiron Club, and also serving as a team physician for football and wrestling. He also served as a school physician and did this for over 10 years, many of years after Beth and I already graduated. I know he would have wanted to recognize and thank many people for their support throughout his life, especially his family, some of whom are here tonight, for all of their love and support, especially his wife Tina, his brother Bruce, his daughter Bethany, his oldest granddaughter Jillian, and also I wanted to thank Bruce for nominating him for this award too. In conclusion, thank you to the selection committee and the Deer Lake School District. Congratulations to the other recipients of this honor. Thank you again. Have a good night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. This next honoree is special to me because he is an alumni of my future home, Slippery Rock University, and because he gave me scholarship money earlier today, and that was really nice of him. So thank you for that. I appreciate it a lot, really a lot. Mr. Michael O'Hare, if you didn't pick up on that from earlier. For a self-described average student, Mr. Michael O'Hare sure has impacted by his educational journey, first at Deer Lakes and later at Slippery Rock University. The younger son of Dodie and Stella O'Hare, Michael was a member of the Deer Lakes' first ever graduating class in 1970. At Deer Lakes, O'Hare served as the MC of the Varsity Club Variety Show. That's really cool. And was also a member of the boys volleyball, baseball, and football teams, the latter of which impacted him most both personally and professionally. After earning his elementary education degree from Slippery Rock in 1974, O'Hare quickly realized that profession was not for him. Eventually, he embarked on what would become immensely successful 35-year career in the consumer products industry, where he represented Coca-Cola, A&W Root Beer, Frito-Lay, and most notably as vice president of Snyder's of Hanover, where he oversaw the company's distribution efforts all over the United States. During O'Hare's tenure, the pretzel manufacturer grew from an 80 million regional snack food supplier to an internationally distributed company worth approximately $1.7 billion annually. Despite his professional success, O'Hare is most proud of his philanthropic efforts. O'Hare sponsors a scholarship for the Deer Lakes High School students that choose to attend Slippery Rock and who meet the scholarship's criteria. The scholarship has honored some of his loved ones and has awarded Slippery Rock-bound Deer Lakes alums who are more than $80,000 in scholarship money since 2004, including a $20,000 gift earlier this afternoon. O'Hare is no stranger at the Deer Lakes Distinguished Alumni Awards. In 2014, he accepted the award on behalf of his late wife, Geraldine Angeloff O'Hare, who passed away in 2004. Jerry O'Hare was herself a class of 1970 alumni and a longtime district administrator. O'Hare, who has since been remarried, lives with his wife Becky in Sunset Beach, North Carolina. His 24-year-old son Adam lives across the state in Charlotte. So, Mr. O'Hare, if you'd like to come up here and say a few words.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited she's going to Slippery Rock University. We got the president of the Deer Lakes High School Student Council going to Slippery Rock. Pappy, I think that's a first. I don't think that's ever happened before. That is great. And I told her today, I think you will end up being the president of your class at Slippery Rock University, without a doubt. I'm humbled to be honored here tonight, and especially to be included with the 4 other honorees, because reading down through that book, we got some special people here, and just to be mentioned with those 4 is definitely an honor that I won't forget. I'd like to thank Kathy Makuta. Where are you, Kathy? I don't see you. Well, Kathy, thank you. You nominated me. Appreciate it. That was great. 2 years ago, yes, I was here for Jerry's induction or Jerry's honor. And as soon as I got off the stage, somebody immediately approached me and said, "You talk too long." So I know there's a gong back here somewhere, but I promise you I'm going to keep it pretty short. Speaking of Jerry, some of you know her. She was my high school sweetheart, and she passed away in 2004, and she's actually here tonight. I don't mean really, that'd be kind of spooky, but she's here in the form of a gift she gave to me 24 years ago, my son, Adam O'Hare. Adam, please stand up. I want everybody to see you. Okay. That's Jerry O'Hare. He's representing his mother here tonight. I thought about what to say, and a story came to mind. And I thought I would start off with this story. The Pope was speaking at the United Nations about 10 years ago. And he landed at JFK. And if you've ever been to New York City and you're on Long Island from JFK, to get there to Manhattan is a bear. So he gets in the limousine, the chauffeur pulls onto the expressway, and they weren't on the expressway for 7 minutes when the traffic stopped dead. It was some kind of wreck or construction or something like that. So the Pope, he doesn't want to be late for his big day at the United Nations. So he says to the chauffeur, he says, you get in the back, I'm going to drive. What's the chauffeur going to say? He says, okay, go ahead, you drive. So the Pope immediately puts the car in reverse. He hasn't driven in about 35 years, right? He's over in the Vatican. Puts the car in reverse, backs into the car that's behind him, scrapes off the car in front of him, pulls over into the median, knocks over 7 or 10 cones, hits a construction vehicle, almost kills a construction worker, sideswipes a police car, and they start chasing after him, and then they pull him over. They get him finally. He's off to the side of the road. They go up to him and say, officer goes up, he rolls his window down, he says, can I have your driver's license and registration? And the Pope doesn't, before the Pope even says anything, the guy says, excuse me for 1 minute. The policeman goes back to the car, and he calls the police station. He says, Sarge, I got somebody out here that just committed every possible road violation, traffic violation imaginable. He says, what are you calling me for? He says, well, he's really big. He's really big? Okay, he says, well, who do you got? You got like the mayor of New York? He says, no, he's bigger than that. He says, well, what do you mean he's bigger than that? Is he the governor of New York? He says, no, he's bigger than that, Sarge. So, okay, don't tell me you've got the president of the United States there. He says, no, he says, it's not the president. Well, who the heck could this guy be? And he says, I don't know, Sarge, but he must be big because the Pope is his chauffeur. So. The reason I say that, if you have the Pope as your chauffeur, you are distinguished, okay? I don't know that I'm actually distinguished. I've never been called that in my life. I think I'm kind of a regular guy. But I'll tell you what I am. I am lucky. You are looking at one of the luckiest people you've ever met in your entire life. And I have some stories to tell you as part of my presentation here to tell you just exactly how lucky I am. This is kind of weird. My luck started 8 years before I was born. I got a Christmas present on Christmas Day, 8 years before I was born. That's kind of unusual, isn't it? Well, my father was on a Navy ship in the Pacific Ocean, and it was hit by a kamikaze pilot. And I was so lucky that must have been the last kamikaze pilot in his class because he missed the ship. He only hit the top of the ship. Unfortunately for me, my wonderful father survived on Christmas Day, 1944, and lived to be my father. So that's when my luck started. The next bit of luck that happened for me was in 1951. He came home from World War II. He didn't have a job, no education, and he got a job with the Coca-Cola Company. He got that job, he came home, and he told my mother, Stell, we're going to have another kid. You're looking at me right here. So thank you for Coca-Cola Company. I'm here for that reason. Next bit of luck, we moved out of the north side, and I didn't know it was a bad neighborhood when I was living there, but I drove through it years later. It wasn't too nice. We moved out here to West Deer Township. My dad spent $11,000 for a home that we thought was a mansion over in Fawn Haven. And I started to go to public school. We're Catholic. To go to public school, it was a big deal. I think I was the first kid in my family to not go to Catholic school, so there was a lot of trepidation out there. But you know what? Lucky Mike got to go to Deer Lake schools. And I had such an experience that you wouldn't believe. And it was a big part of what made me what I am today. Go to Bairdford School. They called it West Deer Consolidated. Anybody go there? Yeah, you went there? Janae went there? Yeah. So I get there, and after having nuns for 2 years, I walk in. I see 3 men in suits. Harry Vidmar, Walt Cesaretti, and Ed Jaworski. Here I am, the first professional people really in my entire life I'd ever been around. I can't tell you how they influenced me. I didn't know it then, But I knew, hey, maybe you weren't a worker or a truck driver, you could do something else. So those guys were unbelievable. Harry Vidmore, fabulous individual. I knew him as an adult. He influenced me. Ed Jaworski, his zest for learning for teaching was fabulous. And Walt Cesaretti, I'm the best at state capitals of anybody in this room, I can tell you right now. I saw him a few years ago up at the clubhouse on Route 8, and I said, Walt, you did so good, I met my second wife in the capital of North Carolina last year. And he knew it was Raleigh. Then we had Mrs. Burns. Mrs. Burns taught me how to diagram sentences. They don't do that anymore, I don't think, but I can write a sentence. And Miss Alsop, she wasn't exactly Mrs. Personality, but I was pretty good in math. And thank those for that. What a great experience. Okay, fast forward, go to high school. Who do I meet there? Mr. Fortune. He was a little crazy, but I'm telling you what, his enthusiasm for writing rubbed off on me. And he was a fabulous, fabulous influence on me. Lucky again, Mike O'Hare. I could take you right over next door, I guess it's next door, past that used to be, we called it the Blue Building, over to the old West Deer High School in probably 1968. I could take you the room's probably still there, I'm sure it's remodeled now. I could take you to the spot, probably the same exact seat, when I was sitting in algebra class when Jim Collins, who just passed away on Easter Monday, rest his soul, came over to me and said, Mike, why aren't you playing football? Lump of clay that I said, I don't know. He said, well, why don't you? I said, well, what position do you think I play? So you could be a guard, 165 pounds. A kid today in the scholarship meeting we had, he played guard, 225. I don't know how I did it. But if Jim, that minute was a life changer for me, because football, I learned so much from it. Robert talked about his dad with football. I guarantee you that he learned from Pappy Bolton like I did, and thousands, probably thousands, of kids learn from that man sitting in the back of the room. You don't know what a life changer it was having an association with Pappy Bolton as your football coach. You don't know what that is unless you've experienced it. He taught me to do things that I never thought I could. We practiced for 3 hours in the heat at Deer Lakes Park. We're dragging, my tongue's down around my knees. At the end of practice, we think we're going home. He goes, see that hill over there? Take that hill. He sticks that chin out, rubs his head. We had to run up that hill. I thought I was going to die. After about the 15th time, we made that hill easily. And there wasn't a game that we played. We didn't win all the games. It wasn't a game we played. We weren't the best prepared, best conditioned people there. Don DeMarco, I was a shy kid, high school, believe it or not. You wouldn't know it now, right? But in high school, Don DeMarco comes up to me at the varsity club show. He says, you're going to be the master of ceremonies. I thought I was going to have a heart attack at a young age. I did that, learned how to speak publicly, lost the fear of it immediately, and everybody said I was good. So Don DeMarco, I was lucky to meet him. By the way, volleyball, Deer Lakes is still pretty good at volleyball. I forgot to mention about Pappy Bolton. He started volleyball at East Deer, then he came up here at West Deer and started it, and taught volleyball, and that's why he's the reason why Deer Lakes is a volleyball power for the last 47 years. He's sitting in the back of the room. If you get a chance to talk to him, you should. Lucky Mike O'Hare again, right? Dave Stuckley, volleyball coach, for some reason he was good too. All these people that I've mentioned, they encouraged me and they stretched me to do more than I ever thought possible. And hopefully you in your life meet people like that, and Deer Lakes provided that to me. I could have been a better student, average student. I think that was a little bit of a stretch when they said that in the thing. Could have been a better student, but here's my problem. Back in 1968, my parents bought for our home phone a 25-foot cord where I could take the phone into the bedroom and talk to my girlfriend for 3 hours a night. So forget about homework. That was a modern technology that helped, that cut into my studies. It wasn't fair. And also what we like to do is ride around up at Eaton Park, up in Natrona Heights, in a circle for 2-3 hours, and maybe we'll see a girl and maybe they'll wave at us. Okay, so, see, some of you did that, right? Raise your hand if you did that. That was great. So I'm thankful for the education I got at Deer Lakes. And you know what? I don't think Deer Lakes, and I don't even live around here anymore, but when I did live in the area, Deer Lakes doesn't get the credit it deserves. I don't think people look at Deer Lakes like a Fox Chapel or this or that. I'm telling you what, you get every bit the education you do everywhere else at Deer Lakes. And you know, it's nice to have a small school. I never would have played hardly any sports. I never would have saw the field if we didn't have, you know, a small school like Deer Lakes. Fabulous, fabulous thing. On the Slippery Rock, loved it. Didn't know I loved it when I was there. Got a teaching degree, didn't know why I wanted to do that. Of course, that's pretty much what you had to do when you went there back then. Taught for 3 months at North Allegheny, wasn't for me. Then I went into consumer products, and I've been selling all of you folks calories for the last 40 years. It worked out pretty good. The best one was Snyder's of Hanover Pretzels. Pittsburgh is the best market, still to this day, for the Snyder's of Hanover Pretzel brand. And the United States is now fully covered by Snyder's of Hanover Pretzels. By the way, please keep buying them so I can continue to do the scholarships for the young students here at Deer Lakes. Speaking of the scholarships, I'm very lucky to do these scholarships. You don't know the feeling that I get from doing these scholarships, and I would recommend if anybody has the opportunity to do something like this, to honor your parents or anybody else in your family, that small, $50, $100, do something. You don't know how that makes you feel. We were with 12 students today. In that room today, rolling out the scholarship for this year, their eyes are like silver dollars, just like I was. Oh my gosh, I'm getting out of high school, I'm going to college, what am I going to, very uncertain, and you know, but they were so brilliant, they were so fabulous. They're much better than I ever was, I can tell you that. But to see them, we go up there every year for a banquet, and to see the students, now the first year when they're up there, when we go to the banquet, they say, well, I'm having a little trouble with biology. Okay, then you worry about them. Then the next year you get back. The second year, they're like professionals. You can tell they're going to be successful. So it's so gratifying. Okay, the gong hasn't gone yet, but the last thing I want to say, I told you I'm not distinguished. I'm lucky. But I do want to mention a couple of people that are before I leave. Number one, there was a lady that watched my son for the first 6 years of his life. Barbara Grundon lived right down here on Barrettford Road. When my son was 6 years old, he was playing up there out in the backyard with Barbara's granddaughter. And she went into the basement to get a toy for the kids. Unfortunately, she slipped on the steps, coming up the steps, fell 4 steps, and passed away 3 weeks later. Beth Grundon's here today, but I need to tell you, Barbara Grundon is distinguished. That's distinguished. And I'll never forget Barbara. And so Barbara is distinguished. I want to leave you with that. And then I told you Miss Alsop. Miss Alsop taught us math. I was pretty good at math, by the way. But this problem I'm going to tell you, this equation, you never heard this one before, but I'm going to tell this to you and you won't forget it. Okay? This is me plus my brother equals 50% of what the person that my sister is. My sister is right there, and she is a person like you wouldn't believe. Generous, giving. Me and my brother don't stack up to half of her. That's distinguished. Lastly, I had a question, so I wanted to Google this. You know, that's what you do today. I'm getting pretty good at that, too. So I Googled this, and the question I asked the Google thing was, how many men in America today have found their dream girl and are lucky enough to have their dream girl? Nothing came up. I guess nobody else asked that question before. So I made this answer up. It's 1 in 1,000. You are looking at one of those 1 in 1,000 people. And my wife, Becky, right there, is my dream girl, and she is distinguished right there. So that's how lucky I am. No gong, and I'm done. I just want to say God bless all of you. Thank you for this. It was fabulous. Or maybe I should say God bless y'all now that I live in the South. So thank you very much.
Next up, we have Mrs. Susan Palmer Oliver. Mrs. Susan Palmer Oliver has dedicated most of her life to serving the Deer Lakes community, including the past quarter century as an English teacher and guidance counselor in the school district. Palmer Oliver worked in her father's pharmacy throughout her high school and college years. After earning her undergraduate and graduate degrees from Clarion University and Gannon University respectively, and after a brief stint as a permanent substitute teacher in the Shaler Area School District. Palmer Oliver worked for 5 years as a counselor at the Harmerville Rehabilitation Center, at the time one of the top rehabilitation facilities of its kind in the United States. However, she always knew that her future lied in education. In 1990, Palmer Oliver began working at Deer Lakes as a middle school and high school English teacher, a job that allowed her to be creative and spontaneous every single day. Palmer Oliver transitioned to her current role as a high school guidance counselor in 1998. She helps her approximately 330 students schedule their respective course loads and resolve both internal and external conflicts. However, her primary responsibility is to help her students achieve their postgraduate ambitions. Over the past decade, Palmer Oliver's students have been awarded more than $20 million in scholarship money, which we cannot be more thankful for. In 2006, Palmer Oliver and the National Honor Society chapter she sponsored founded the Community Foundation through a grant through Northern Area Community Outreach, which has helped dozens of Deer Lake students attend four-year colleges and universities. Under her guidance, the National Honor Society also laid the groundwork for the founding of the Best Buddies program, which pairs high school students with intellectual and developmental disabilities with general education students their own age. The program's primary goal is to give all the students involved a different perspective on the high school experience. Palmer Oliver and her husband Greg still live in the Westier home in which she grew up on Russellton-Dorseyville Road. And from my own personal experience, I can say that she's one of the kindest, most hardworking people that I get to work with through both National Honor Society and the entire hectic college application process. And for that, I thank you, and I'm honored to present this award to you. Mrs. Susan Palmer Oliver.
Good evening. I have stood at this podium so many times, but never for myself. Usually at graduation, reciting the names or doing National Honor Society, things like that, but this is a whole different avenue for me. Clara told me to bring Kleenex, or she said, you thought you cried at Danny Angeloni's, wait till you get here, so I'm using this as reference. So I am honored to be here, and actually tonight I just found out who nominated me. I never knew, and here it was the students, it was the senior students, and that's just incredible. I didn't even know that somebody who still worked in the district could be included in the Distinguished Alumni, so that was a first for me also, and then to have the students do it is like amazing. I really thought when I was told that I was going to be a Distinguished Alumni, I said, oh, you mean for my dad? And they said, no, for you. I'm like, really? And they said, didn't you get the letter? And I'm like, no, I'm going to look for it. Now I just say, it was a shock to me. So it's an incredible honor. And I know that I truly am the hometown girl. You know, I grew up as Susie Palmer, and anybody my age and older knows me as Susie Palmer. Bill Palmer's daughter, as Clara said. And I am fortunate to have two wonderful parents who guided me and a really close-knit community that has always looked after each other. My dad was a 1948 Westier graduate, or I'm sorry, 1946 Westier graduate. Started Pitt for pharmacy school after his discharge from the Army. He married my mother while he was in pharmacy school. She worked to support them, and he drove a cab on the weekends. My grandmother, this would be my father's mother, owned a general store in Russellton that is now Palmer's Drug Store. She sold that business to my dad for $500. It was very expensive back then. And that was the start of Palmer's Pharmacy. My dad hired another pharmacist to enter this journey with him, and that person would be Daniel Yanichko. His son is Bill Yanichko of the funeral home business and a Distinguished Alumni. Bill and I graduated together. My father and Dan Yanichko were also school board members for many years while we were students here. And my father had been given many offers through the years from chains, from Rite Aid to Thrift Drug, etc., to be bought out because they were an independent pharmacy, and he always refused. He thought maybe one of his 3 children would become a pharmacist. And I had 2 older brothers, and I'm the only girl. My 2 older brothers had 0 interest in becoming pharmacists. They had seen the hours my dad worked, and they had nothing to do with it. So he set his sights on me, and that was really just not the right thing to do because I didn't inherit the pharmacy gene. And my students know about this. I always tell this story to them during their, when I talk to them about careers. Many students get so upset about not being able to pinpoint a career, and as parents, we want them to start to tell us, what do you think you want to do after high school? And we want them to narrow it down. But not many kids are able to do that, you know, when they're 16 or 17 years old. And so I tell the kids this following story. My dad was positive I was going to be the link, and I was going to take over the pharmacy. Why? Because I worked there since I was 14 years old. But I was the soda jerk behind the counter, doing the, you know, the milkshakes and the ice cream cones for the baseball players in the summer, etc. That was me. I liked that, you know. I never went back there to the pharmacy. Never. It was not me. But I tried to tell him that, you know, just nicely, like, oh, I don't know about that, Dad, you know, but he pursued. So I'll fast forward you to the 10th grade, and I'm in chemistry, and for any of us that have been around, there was a teacher named Dino Acey, and he was a chemistry teacher, very smart, and I received a C in chemistry for the first 9 weeks, and that C was a gift, because I did my homework. Because Debbie Grandy was the smartest girl in the school and gave it to me. And that's how I got a C in chemistry. True story. And I'd never had a C before, so I knew I was in trouble. But I brought it home, put it on the kitchen table, waited for my dad to come home. My mom's just like, oh, here we go, here we go. Pulls it up, C in chemistry. Now, meanwhile, at that time, and it's something we wouldn't do today, teachers would give the grades out to the students. So he'd be like, Palmer, C. How did Bill Palmer's daughter, I'm getting the pharmacist's daughter, you're getting a C in this. I'm like, oh my Lord, you know, for the whole class to hear. But anyway, that was it. So my dad picks up the report card, looks at it, and I think that whole image of me being a pharmacist was going down the drain right then, because he took it and he threw it across the room and he said, no daughter of mine can get a C in chemistry and become a pharmacist, which, you know, I'm 15. So I start to do what any 15-year-old would do when her father yells at her. I start to cry. So I never wanted to be a pharmacist anyway, Dad. And I'm crying, and my mother's going, oh, Bill, look what you did. Now look what you did, you know. So it's the end of the pharmacy conversation, but it was the beginning of me becoming a teacher. Little did we know at that time. So anyway, after the episode in the kitchen, he started to counsel me then. Reality had set in. There would be no pharmacist to carry on that name. But he wanted me to do something because my mother was bound and determined that her daughter would go to college because she never had the opportunity to do so. But I had no idea. I was in 10th grade, and my best friend of all time is here tonight. She'll tell you, the only thing I really liked to do was twirl the baton. I mean, I lived, breathed, slept, twirled that baton. My dad paid for lessons. That's what I did on Saturdays. So, as my dad was trying to tell me I have to start to think about what I want to do, my mother would counsel me very nicely and say, you know, you should pick something that you're good at, that you have a natural propensity towards, and I say this to the kids today, and something that you like. So I thought, well, I'm really good at twirling the baton, and I can even juggle a little bit, and I like clowns. And that was my 10th grade mind. And so every Sunday, my father would spread all of his paperwork out for the business on the floor. And I had done some career exploration and had decided, after looking at the Sunday paper and finding an excerpt that you could cut out and send for a course catalog from the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, associate degree program, their school in Florida. I had it made. I knew what I wanted to do. I liked it, and I could be a clown. I even had a clown collection at home by this time. So one Sunday, I decided this was the time. This was the place. It didn't go over well. A no daughter of mine routine again is ever going to be a clown, and I will never drop a penny for a clown school. Thus ended that career exploration. So there was another distinguished alumni, and his name was Danny Angeloni. And I was going to pick electives for going into the 11th grade. And I'm really happy today we have a whole barrage of electives that we can offer our kids for next year. It's an exciting time at Deer Lakes. And it reminds me a little bit of this time when we had so much to choose from in terms of the fun courses or the things that would give us career exploration. But I went to him because, I had a lot of pressure at home and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he looked at my grades and he said, "Wow, you're really good in English." And I said, yeah, I like to write. And he said, "Well, we're offering a journalism class. Why don't you take that? You get to write for the school newspaper, etc." So I did that. Went home and told my mother, so she just expanded on it. She said, "Oh, you could be a teacher. Wouldn't it be fun to read all those kids' essays?" And at the time I said, "Oh yeah," because my essays were pretty good. I'd like to read all those essays like mine. And that's not true when you're a teacher. You get that red pen out for hours and hours. But I did think, oh, you know what though? I loved school. I loved everything about school, even the classes. I liked twirling, we were student government. We were involved in everything. We wore our green and gold tassel caps on Fridays. Penny, do you remember? And hoped your boyfriend gave you his tassel cap. And it was just, I was immersed in it. So it seemed like that might be a pretty good fit. When I was a senior, we were in a class play here, and it was a variety show. And there was a woman named Sandy Miller, who was our drama teacher. And I talked to her for a minute about it. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be an English teacher or what I wanted to do, but I thought maybe I'll go into teaching. And she said, "Well, when you're a teacher, you have to perform every day for 40 minutes. And you have to try to get that audience to understand the idea that you're conveying. And they might not like the performance. You won't always get 5 stars, but that's what you have to do as a teacher." And I always took that message with me. I thought, well, okay, apparently I like to perform, so I should be able to do that. And that nudged me even closer. So I fast forward to my senior year, and I finalized my college choices between 2. I was either going to go to Clarion, which my father would have been very happy about because my 2 older brothers were still in college, and so this would be the 3rd college tuition. So he was kind of hoping that would be my choice. But I was also choosing between Westminster. I was a member of East Union Presbyterian Church up the road here, and they talk about Westminster all the time, so my mother liked that school. But I couldn't decide between the 2, and I really and truly couldn't decide between the 2, so much so that we had to put the down payment on both schools to reserve my seat when you have to do that by May 1st, because I couldn't make a decision. And I didn't really want to make a decision. I just couldn't do it. So finally, the first week of June, right before I'm graduating, an admissions officer from Westminster calls me. And I'm talking to him on the phone about, no, I haven't made my decision because I haven't done my housing yet or gone to orientation or anything. And so he's trying to decide, well, what seems to be the problem? And I said, well, I'm trying to decide between Westminster and Clarion. And my father happened to walk into the bedroom at the time. And he was behind me. And I didn't know that. And at any rate, he said, well, what seems to be the deciding factor? What is not helping you not make your decision? What's the problem? And I said, does Westminster have a majorette squad? And he said, what? And I'm like, twirl the baton. And he said, oh, no, we have flags. I go, oh, no, not flags, no. I need baton twirling. And he goes, no, I'm sorry, we don't. I said, okay, well, then I'm going to go to Clarion. Next thing I hear is, Grace, your daughter just made her college decision based on a baton. And I did. It's a true story. So, my freshman year, my parents came up for Autumn Leaf Festival at Clarion. If you've ever been there, it's a big parade, etc. And my parents were standing next to me, and I told my dad, someday I'm going to lead this parade. And he's like, yeah, okay, honey, So they had this huge band at the time. They had 7 majorettes on the squad. That was it. So at any rate, the following year I tried out. I made it. So my senior year, there I am. I'm the head majorette at Clarion State College. We turn the corner. We go on the main street, and the fight song starts. And there's this man over there crying on the sidewalk. It's my father. I'm going by, what are you doing? Looking at him like, what's happening? And they follow me the whole way down to the football stadium. And my mother is supporting him. as they go, and he's crying his eyes out. She always said she was going to lead that parade. I can't believe it. You know, he really showed some emotion. He was all about it. But during my final year at Clarion, I had the privilege of teaching at Brookville Junior Senior High School. And it was a wonderful small school where kids actually milked the cows. I remember yelling at a student one time, like, honey, you sleep every day after lunch. Took him out in the hall, can you tell me? I milk the cows at 4 a.m. I'm like, oh, Deer Lakes looks like a city compared to, this. Okay, we're all right. But it was interesting because as I ended my student teaching there, I was called to go to the superintendent's office. And my supervising teacher said, we might have somebody leaving at the end of this school year. And I've told him, you were a good student for me. He wants to talk with you about this. Okay. So I go over there, and here the man's name is Dr. John Grotenthaler, and he is a distinguished alumni for Deer Lakes. And it was interesting as I said who I was, and he didn't know this. He put two and two together, and what did he say? Oh, Bill's daughter. My brother John comes into the drugstore every night after work and gets coffee, and I waited on him a million times. So that was really interesting, how this small community, expands out into outer horizons, and here we are. We find them, and we come back. So I graduated in December of '80. 2 weeks out, I'm living at home. Much to my father's chagrin, I'm back, and I get a call from Shaler. Shaler needed an immediate permanent substitute for their junior high English position. I thought I was going to just sub for the rest of the year, a little bit here, a little bit there, get used to, living back in Deer Lakes, but Father said, no, you're going to interview for that job, and if you get it, you're going. I was paranoid of driving in the snow. I kept, coming up with a different excuse, and my mother said, no, I think I know somebody who works at Shaler, and I'm going to call and find out. And lo and behold, it was Distinguished Alumni Clara Salve. Where are you, Clara? I have my glasses on. There she is. Honest, I was as green as could be. I mean, I'm fresh out of college. I have only student taught, and Clara carpools with me for 2 semesters, and during that time, she taught me so much, because every day she'd question me, well, what happened today? And I tell her about all the at-risk kids that I loved, and I go, oh, what about this one? And then she'd roll her eyes back and go, oh, yes, and then try to teach me a little bit about what it was like to be a professional and a teacher. So I really appreciate that, Clara. I mean, you were patient with me, and I was trying to navigate the whole scene of becoming an adult, and she did a great job. After the permanent position at Shaler, our permanent sub position was done, I decided to approach Mom and Dad about maybe I should go for graduate school, go for my counseling degree. And I went to Gannon up in Erie and became a teaching assistant there, and worked for the graduate program. I needed to complete one internship in a school, which I did up in Erie, and then a second one in a community setting, and I chose Harmerville Rehabilitation Center. Today it's known as Health South Harmerville. And I was hired there shortly after graduation. I stayed there for 5 years as a rehabilitation counselor. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, unless you're around people who've had traumatic brain injury, paralysis, stroke, you name it, and see what they are able to accomplish in a setting like that. It's something that's very eye-opening. Still, through all of that, I knew what I really wanted to do was I wanted to teach. I really did. Fortunately, there was another distinguished alumni named Joe Catnays and his wife, and they were set to have their second baby named Joseph, Joey Jr. And I had just left my job at Harmerville and had just started subbing at Deer Lakes. And another distinguished alumni named John DeSanti, Dr. John DeSanti, asked me if I would be the permanent sub for Mrs. Catnays when she went on maternity leave. And then the following year, I was hired here as an English teacher. I taught mostly 8th and 12th grades. I loved it. 8th graders are energetic and eager every day, and 12th graders, you have to take the ride, and you better be creative whenever you work with 12th graders, because they get tired and they're ready to graduate. But I loved having both avenues, and all along I realized at that point that my mother really was right. She said you should go into teaching, and she was right. I taught English for 8 years when the call came about an opening in the guidance office. So there was this one guidance counselor that was my former teacher, when I was back in 8th grade. He was my favorite teacher. And he came to my room one day and he said, "We need a female guidance counselor. I'm tired of carrying the load down there. We have all males. We need a female, and I heard you have a guidance certificate." And I said, "Well, yeah. And he said, "Well, we never had a female before. We need a female." So after that year, I made the move from English to guidance, and it was a whole new world of education that I had never seen before. And once again, I was back to the beginning, and I was green again. But just like with Clara, I had a mentor, and he deserves half of that award for putting up with me. My first 2 days, I was a 7th and 8th grade guidance counselor, and I sat in this little room. I had no idea what to do. I just sat there, and he'd walk by. He always had coffee, and he'd walk by and go, "How's it going?" I'd be like, "I don't know. What am I supposed to do?" I used to teach 6 classes a day. You're very rudimented when you're a teacher, and there I was sitting. I go, what? Finally, after 2 days, I said, "Well, seriously, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I'm just sitting here. There aren't a lot of schedule changes to do for 7th and 8th graders, you know?" And he gave me some really good advice. And he spoke in rhythms and rhymes a lot. He said, "Feel the dreams, baby." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Feel the dreams. If you build it, they will come." I'm like, how do you want me to build this? He goes, "I want you to call down the 3 worst kids in the class. Find out from the teachers, or find out from the assistant principal. Find out the 3 worst 7th graders, the 3 worst 8th graders. If they like you, you're golden. You'll never be bored again." So I did it. And I followed his advice, and pretty soon they came in droves. Girls, "Oh, don't do this to her," blah, 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 coming in the office. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe this is guidance." But 7th and 8th grade, these are different people. And Jackie Jarris, oh my goodness, God bless you. And I did 7th and 8th grade, and then went to 9th and 10th right after that. And the next 7 years with this wise person who calls himself a gym rat was most likely the best years I had. The truth is, he never formally trained me. He gave advice, sometimes in riddles and rhythms, like I just said, and wisdom. Always checked to make sure I was okay. But he warned me that there's really no way to train a guidance counselor for this job. You get in, you get your feet wet, and then you have somebody to help you. And he was right, I have him here today, and his name, I'm going to cry on him, is Bill Abbott. When I got this news, I told my husband, "Oh my goodness, I have to call Abbott. He has to be here. He's one of a kind, a leader, a mentor, a friend, and I've learned volumes of him about life, about everything." And every once in a while, I get praised about my proficiency in my job, and I always say, but I was trained by the best. So after he decided to retire, I frighteningly started as a junior-senior counselor and the National Honor Society sponsor, and Abbott told me, "Don't worry, you'll never have more than 250 applications that you have to do." But it was the advent of applications becoming online applications, and I had 350 that year. Thanks, Abbott. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think I called him a lot that first year, too, because I really didn't know what I was doing. But that first same year, I had a senior named Maria Mercuri, Vince Mercuri's daughter, for those of you that recognize that name. And she was elected president of the National Honor Society. And she's a true politician, and she wanted to make a difference. So she told me she wanted to leave a legacy to Deer Lakes by having National Honor Society start a foundation for our school. She said other large schools had foundations and gave me a few examples. She had volunteered at the Northern Allegheny Community Outreach, and that enabled her to apply for a grant for startup costs for a foundation. I knew she was way beyond me with what she was saying, so I led her to our principal, and he arranged for these 4 young women that were NHS officers to go to an attorney's office and find out the necessary steps to create a foundation for Deer Lakes. After we received the grant from the Northern Allegheny Community Outreach, we booked a foundation dinner and had speakers like Tunch Ilkin and Dr. Baker from the Pittsburgh Zoo come. Today, the Community Foundation still stands and is now run through Mr. Belisario and continues to provide funds for events at Deer Lakes and scholarships for our deserving students. At National Honor Society, we also ran 3 successful Dancing with the Teachers fundraisers in order to fund a senior citizens prom. And we have another Dancing with the Teachers one coming up on May 24th. But the Senior Citizens Prom was a long-awaited wish for me. Once I began working with the West Air Alumni Club and that distinguished alumni, Dan Angeloni, I saw the enormity of the alumni group and the dedication and the camaraderie that filled that American Legion once a month. I presented this community service idea to the NHS kids, and they were sold. I'm proud to say that now we have held 4 senior citizens proms since 2010, and it's a life-changing experience for the students who participate, many of them stating they've enjoyed that prom more than their own. It's something to see them doing the chicken dance together and having the senior citizens teach them how to do the polka and the box step, etc. Really something, and we'd have over 100 senior citizens attend these proms. And probably the most personal and professional contribution that has come to fruition is through NHS is that we laid the groundwork for our Best Buddies group, which is known today. It is a national charter, and they only give so many memberships per year. But 2 teachers and I attended a workshop at Pine Richland, and they hosted it on an in-service day, and the topic was their Best Buddies group. After that in-service, we asked if it would be possible to bring some of our Deer Lakes kids over to meet with the Pine Richland kids to explore this idea. And many years ago, Lisa Jameson, a teacher at Deer Lakes, ran something similar in the kindergarten classroom with my son who has autism. And she was able to start a play group for 15 to 20 minutes before school began. And pretty soon, kids were arguing over whose turn it was to play with Alex in the special room, which I thought was great. And that always reminded me of Best Buddies. We took the National Honor Society officers to Pine Richland to meet with the Best Buddies officers, and what I saw there amazed me. At that time, our special needs students definitely ate in the cafeteria, but they ate at a table in the back by themselves, and perhaps maybe with an aide or a teacher there. But there were no typical kids there. It was just them. And the Pine Richlands kids said, well, at Pine Richland, we're involved daily. And I said, what do you mean? And it was lunchtime. And they said, well, like at lunchtime, our Best Buddies members sit with the kids. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they said, come on, I'll take you. And they took me to see it, and I couldn't believe it. And there they were. But if you come to Deer Lakes now, you will see the same exact thing every day. Our girls are at the table. Those Best Buddies treat them just like they're, one of their best friends. They do things inside the school, outside of the school, and it's amazing. It's one of the largest groups now at Deer Lakes, 8 years later. So that's my legacy. My final work is that I most enjoy meeting and working with the students and their families. It's gratifying to watch the students become more assertive and, as a result, mature as they explore their future possibilities. Once those are solidified, I always encourage scholarship possibilities for our student. I think I'm pretty competitive, and I really like to play the scholarship game. When I think I have one, I get very excited, and if that student doesn't win, I get really angry and say, well, I'm never going to do that one again. Eventually I do, but I really enjoy it. I like writing the recommendation letters and trying to angle the students toward which scholarships are best for them. We're fortunate to be a smaller school in a community, so it's not unusual for me to know the students, their siblings, and their parents by the time they graduate. We used to have a game where we'd play, have 6 seniors around the table, and I would say their mother's first names, and it would freak the students out. They'd be like, how do you know all that? But you really do get to know your students very well and their families. We are fortunate to have a solid scholarship base at Deer Lakes. Earlier today, we honored 12 Slippery Rock students, as you know, through Dear Michael O'Hare's continued generosity. Our active West Deer Alumni Club, led by the legend Dan Angeloni, fundraises an approximate $7,000 a year for our seniors every year in the form of what they call Quick Start scholarships. Our Knights of Columbus group, the Order of the Owls, local churches, and other familiar contributors all contribute scholarship to this local communities. As I said before, my father was a long-time school board member serving on the board when this building was initially built. A plaque with his name hangs on it in our hallways that I pass every day. I graduated on this stage and he gave me the diploma. My mother, though, is, you know, how they say behind every successful man is a great woman. That's how my mom and dad were. She felt strongly that women needed to be able to provide for themselves and to be educated. She'd always say, you can take anything material away. You can take a car away, a house away, or whatever, but they can't take your education away. And that's true. She was right about that one, too. So I'm fortunate to have Bill and Grace Palmers as my parents, definitely. I'm also very fortunate to have the special family members with me tonight. I have a wonderful mother-in-law. So after my mom passed, I was fortunate enough to have Mary Lloyd, who graduated from West Deer, I believe, in 1945, and she should be a distinguished alumni herself for everything she does in the community and in her church, and I'm proud to have her with us. 13 years ago, almost, I made the intelligent decision of marrying Greg Oliver. He's here tonight, loving stepfather to my son, and a regular prom and senior dinner dance chaperone, right, Greg? So he spends a lot of quality time up here, too. I was going to have my son Alex here with Christine. They were here for a little bit, and I said, oh, no, it's too quiet here, so you can go home. So he's not here, but yeah, we have a wonderful girl named Christine that works with him for the past almost 16 years. And every autism family needs a person like her, definitely. Lastly, thank you to everyone who nominated me for this award and to be included with this wonderful group tonight. It's some of the most revered alumni, and I'm truly honored and grateful. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Ms. Melinda Roeder. Ms. Melinda Roeder has enjoyed a fabulously selective 2-decade career as a broadcast journalist, earning 7 Edward R. Murrow Awards, 26 Emmy nominations, 13 Regional Emmy Awards, and 21 Associated Press Regional Broadcasting Awards in Maryland, Kentucky, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, among others. A member of the Screen Actors Guild, Roeder has also appeared in television productions including Veep and House of Cards. Roeder attended Duquesne University, where she worked as a student reporter and producer for WDUQ Radio before earning her degree in 1997. She also worked for KQV News Radio and WTAE TV during and after her college career. In 1998, Roeder made the move to a full-time on-air career at the NBC affiliate in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. From there, she worked as a reporter and on-air personality in Evansville, Indiana, Lexington, Kentucky, Baltimore, Maryland, and Atlanta, Georgia, before returning home to Pittsburgh earlier this year. In 2015, Roeder earned her master's degree in Communications and Leadership Studies from Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington, which focused on crisis communication strategies via social media. Roeder currently works as an adjunct college professor of journalism and video production at Waynesburg College. She also works as a freelance reporter for WESA, where she produces a weekly technology report. In addition to her professional responsibilities, Roeder also serves as co-chair of the Communications Committee for the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and has served as an NATAS trustee. She is also a member of the National Press Club and the Radio Television Digital News Association. 3 times, Roeder was named Best Reporter by the Associated Press for the state of Maryland. She has also been named Best Reporter by Baltimore Magazine. Congratulations to Ms. Melinda Roeder.
Wow. It's been a number of years since I have been here on this stage, but I have so many fond memories of the high school musicals that I participated in, cheering during pep rallies, the time I was dropped on my head during a routine to AC/DC's TNT. Back when I was just a little girl with big dreams and even bigger hair. It was 1993, after all. This is an incredible event, and I first want to thank the administration, the school board members, the students, Mr. James Cromie, and everyone who had a hand in putting this together. I appreciate that you realize the value in recognizing alumni and celebrating their successes as part of our shared legacy that is Deer Lakes. I'm not aware of many school districts that do something like this, and I just think that this is remarkable, and I appreciate it very much. I want to thank my family for being here tonight, my parents, my little sister, my 2 aunts whom I love dearly, and my fiance. You guys are the biggest reason why I moved back to Pennsylvania after all those years of being away. But my support system really goes beyond my family. I want to thank Father Jim Holland from Transfiguration Church for being here tonight as well. Some of you may know Transfiguration used to have an elementary school, and that's where I attended school before I transferred here at Deer Lakes. And I got a fabulous foundation there, I really did. And I am so proud of that church, that parish, for continuing to be vibrant after so many challenges, after the school closed and after the church burned down. And I think it's a testament to our community. We had a lot of support from the parish and also from folks in the community outside of the parish during that time of rebuilding. Also, my support system includes our community at large. It is truly something special to be from a place like Deer Lakes. Genuine, real people who are honest and humble and hardworking and loving and supportive. Just a really close-knit community. And I took that for granted when I was a kid. But as I became an adult and I moved all around the country for my career, I was in South Dakota, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Georgia. Anyway, somewhere along the line, I grew to have a deeper appreciation for home and what it meant to me. And every time I would return to visit, it was always a humbling but a loving experience, and it really grounded me and reminded me of my roots, of where I came from and how far I had come. And that journey for me really began, by the way, here in this building, which is why I especially need to mention a couple of people who were just very significant to me during my time here. When I first came here, as I said, I transferred from the Catholic school. I was timid, I was very shy, and there was Mr. Dan Angeloni. We all know him, we all love him. He has been a family friend for a number of years. When my mom and her siblings lost their parents at an early age, Mr. Angeloni was right there to support them in any way that he possibly could. And so years later, when I came along, he noticed the name Roeder on the roster, and he sought me out. And he said, "Yeah, you look like one of those Roeder girls." And he said, which one do you belong to? Diane, Janae, Linda? I said, "Well, I'm Janae's daughter." And he said, "Oh, great, the wild one." And I remember I was really shy at that time, and I said, "No, Mr. Angeloni, I'm nothing like my mother." And he said, "Give it time." She was always a ham. She was the lead singer in a band. She was always up on stage doing, musicals, and just give her a microphone, give her a camera, and she's happy as a clam. Boy, was he right. He definitely saw that coming. Mr. Angeloni really took me under his wing, and he made me feel special. I later found out I wasn't special at all. He made everybody feel that way. But that is truly a gift, and he is definitely a gift to our community. The other person I want to mention was my favorite teacher here, and that's Mr. Andy Straniak. I tried to reach him. I couldn't get in touch with him, so he's not here tonight. But he taught English. He taught public speaking and advanced public speaking. And as an offshoot to that class, we created this weekly video production. It was like a newscast, and we called it DL, or Deer Lakes Magazine. And that project only lasted a few years. I believe it was cut, years ago for budget reasons. but it had tremendous impact on the students who participated in that project. You know, I went on to pursue a career in TV news. One of my classmates became a radio disc jockey. Another one of my classmates, he was in theater for a while before getting a job with the federal government, and now he travels around the world giving presentations. The common thread there was Mr. Straniak. And I think that he was really instrumental in helping us to find our voices. He gave us the confidence and the courage to speak up and to speak out, and I don't think I've shut up since. So now we know who to blame for that. But it goes to show the impact that one educator can really have on just an entire generation of students. So now that I'm an educator and I'm teaching at Waynesburg University and I'm teaching my students all the ins and outs of broadcast journalism, I can only hope to inspire them in much the same way. My life has come full circle. It is so great to be back home. I've been blessed and I've been fortunate to receive professional recognition along the way. I mean, the Emmys, the Murrows, the AP Awards. I am proud of each and every one of them. But I have to tell you that this award is just as special to me, if not more so, because it came from you, from my community, from my home. And so I promise you that it will always have a place of honor in my home and in my heart. And in the world of TV news, they like you to keep all of your stories less than 2 minutes. If you go more than 45 seconds, they start giving you the cue to wrap. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap right now and make all of my producers proud. Thank you so much.
Our final honoree tonight is Mrs. Deborah Stanko Zacherl. Mrs. Deborah Stanko Zacherl holds the unique distinction of being the final class valedictorian in the history of East Deer Fraser High School. However, it has been her contributions as a teacher that have earned her the universal admiration and respect from her colleagues and students alike. After graduating from Penn State University in 1972, Stanko Zacherl spent 11 years teaching elementary students in the community in which she grew up. In the mid-1980s, Stanko Zacherl's husband was transferred to Virginia, forcing her to put her career on a hiatus. To scratch her teaching itch, Stanko Zacherl volunteered at a number of local schools while her daughters were growing up. For the past 14 years, Stanko Zacherl has worked as a second-grade teacher at the Naismith School for the Gifted, an academically advanced private school in Herndon, Virginia. Stanko Zacherl is best known by her colleagues and students alike for her incredible ability to inspire and motivate her students to take on advanced mathematics through a series of approaches including kinesthetic, auditory, tactile, and visual approaches for each math concept, often making up rhymes, songs, or physical activities to help further drive home the concept. Despite her obvious willingness to innovate, Stanko Zacherl still considers herself a traditionalist at heart who has simply learned how to adapt. Her long, successful career is a testament to her unique ability to couple modern approaches with traditional principles. Colleagues and former students call her a strict disciplinarian who is beloved by her students because of her natural warmth and her willingness to go to great lengths to ensure her students' success. Stanko Zacherl lives in Oak Hill, Virginia, with her husband, Lemoyne. They have 2 adult daughters, Chelsea and Leah, and a grandson, David. Stanko Zacherl's surviving brothers are Donald and David. Their 94-year-old mother, Kay, still lives in the Creighton home in which she raised her family. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Deborah Stanko Zacherl.
Good evening. When you're a Z, you're always last. Thank you to the committee for presenting me with one of the Distinguished Alumni Awards this year. And congratulations to the other recipients. I'm really proud to be able to stand here with you. It is kind of funny that I had no idea that the Deer Lakes Distinguished Alumni Awards even existed until my amazing niece, Danielle Stanko Godinez, nominated me. Then I found out my husband Lemoyne and my niece Danielle were two of the sneakiest people that I have ever known. They were good collaborators. They contacted my colleagues at school, my neighbors, my daughters, and they all wrote recommendations without me having any idea that it was all going on. I'm truly touched, and all of my colleagues at school, what they did for me, I'm really honored. I unearthed a copy of that graduation speech, and truly, 1969, I unearthed it. I was assigned to speak on the middle part of your life, the middle part of the ladder of life. So now your formal education was done, and you were going to learn by living. It addressed all the kinds of things that we might be learning as we were going on and no longer in formal education. The speech was really very, very hopeful. And I had mentioned that we hoped we'd be able to be accepting of differences, helpful in righting wrongs, and respectful of all others. Now, it's been almost 47 years since I gave that speech, and I must say that I have learned a lot through those 47 years of living. I look back on the years when I taught at Deer Lakes as some of the most special years of my life. I actually started in the annex, the blue building, and it finally came to have the name East Union Elementary. I can remember where all of the teachers were in the various classrooms through that building. I had wonderful mentors. Josephine Acey and James Yaconis were my first principals, and they were wonderful role models. I can even still see where some of the kids were sitting in the classrooms. First row by the door, third seat back. They were absolutely wonderful and memorable years and really helped me to shape myself to be the teacher that I am. Not long after my marriage, my husband was transferred to the Washington, D.C. office of Coopers and Lybrand, so I had to go with him. I sadly resigned from Deer Lakes School District. It was very exciting, but it was really, really hard to leave everyone. Everybody was here near the Berg. My parents, my brothers, my sister-in-laws who were truly like sisters, my nieces, my friends. My husband and I were Yankees going down into rebel country. We settled in Northern Virginia because it really reminded us a lot of Western Pennsylvania. And then I found out nobody was really from Northern Virginia. We were all born from in other states. Our very next door neighbors, our very first neighbors in Virginia, were from Pittsburgh. Next, our daughters were born, our greatest joy in our lives, so I put my teaching on hold. Chelsea and Leah gave us more joy than we could even imagine. And my husband and I did all the volunteer jobs. We drove them to piano lessons and swimming lessons and the ballet classes and flute lessons and also, of course, all the activities that were going on at our schools. Both daughters now are on their own, grown, and we even have a grandson named David. Going back to teaching was downright scary for me. I had been away from it for nearly 18 years. The actual teaching came back naturally, but the new technology scared me to pieces. From the early years, I was teaching English at Deer Lakes. Now I found myself teaching math. Computers had just been introduced into the schools at Deer Lakes. We were trying to write our old programs and our own programs, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was really unsure when I went back to teaching of my computer skills. Now I can't imagine a day without using the computer and the smartboard. I guess you truly are never too old to learn something new. And believe me, if I could learn computer skills, anybody could. Many things about my two teaching positions have been different, but there are certain things that are never going to change. Teaching is a passion. It is a true high when you see the glimmer in your students' eyes that they're learning what you're trying to teach them. I look at the work they produce and I marvel at their accomplishments. I learn just as much from them as they learn from me. I treat them with respect, and I expect that same respect to be given back to me. We laugh together a lot. They know that I really, really care about them, not just for them to learn the subject matter that I'm trying to teach them, but that I want them to grow up to be good, caring, and kind, compassionate people. I've learned a great deal since making that high school speech 47 years ago. That middle part of my ladder of life, I hope I'm still in the middle part of that. I appreciate and love all of my family members for supporting me tonight, Lemoyne and Danielle, thanks, and all through the years. And thank you again to the committee for this wonderful award.
Alrighty, everybody, that is our final honoree for the night. So as a wrap-up, I just want to say on behalf of myself, and I speak for my peers also, and I say that it was such a fantastic experience to listen to everyone's stories and hear all these memories. And I know personally, I hope that I can come back someday and say the same things that you guys did and make an impact on the people around me like you guys have. So thank you so much for coming out tonight and sharing and celebrating with us.